Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today we are going to discuss media representation and marginal, castes and tribes. This lecture is a part of your paper Media and Margins. In this lecture, we will be discussing how the diverse marginalized communities are depicted and the space they get in the mass media. Mass media, especially newspapers, played a major role in defining and demonstrating the nation building processes in America and Europe. In the context of colonial countries, post-independence media was used as an important tool in the nation building process. In India and other colonial countries, nationalism or nation building was strongly influenced by the ideas and culture of the dominant communities and religious groups. In the Indian context, the nation-making process came to be identified with the Hindu upper caste traditions, because of which in a multicultural society like ours, many other communities faced socio-political, economic and cultural exclusion and were eventually rendered marginalized in the society. Hence, the relationship between media and marginality is historical, and in the contemporary scenario, with the humongous rise and impact of mass media, it is necessary to study the condition of the marginalized in the society as well as in relation to their depiction and space they find in media. This lecture will help us understand the role of mass media in constructing this discourse and the ways in which media has promoted or hindered the positive outlook on cultural diversity. Learning outcome. We will learn about marginality, the role of mass media in aiding the process of marginalization, and how it is done. The lecture will also help us in understanding the various processes of media representation and how the mass media can become more inclusive. Media representation. Media representation denotes the construction of aspects of reality such as people, particular groups, communities, places, objects, events, cultural identities, and other abstract concepts. The media characterizes the above mentioned social groups from a particular ideological or value perspective. There are various forms to depict such representations. It may be as still or moving picture as well as speech or writing. Rather than examining media representations as simply reflecting or mirroring, we will be examining how media representations serve to represent or to actually create a new reality. The term media representation not only denote to the processes involved but also to the products. Caste, class, religion, and gender are some of the main categories of identity in the Indian context, and representation implicates not only how identities are represented or rather constructed within the text, but also how they are constructed in the processes of production and reception by people whose identities are also differently marked in relation to such demographic factors. The media becomes very powerful in terms of influencing ideas and attitudes. The media acts as the important negotiator in the public process of constructing, contesting, or maintaining the civic discourse on social cohesion, integration, tolerance, and international understanding. The media also has the power to sway attention to and from public issues, which determines the issues tackled or ignored by the society. The issues which gain publicity are the only issues which have the potential to arouse the political interests and make people ponder about the social and political implications beyond their immediate experience. Key terms in representation. In order to highlight how issues and ideas are exemplified in media texts, it is necessary to know certain key terms in media representation. This will help us get a better understanding. 1. Construction. The way in which the media text is put together is called construction. It may be the editing and choice of camera angles in a film or television program, or the layout, writing, or the choice of images in a magazine or newspaper. Mediation. The processes through which everything goes through before it reaches the audience is called mediation. The way newspaper or magazine photographs are cropped and captioned, real life events like a protest or speeches by politicians are portrayed in a news report, or how film scripts are written and rewritten before it makes it to production are some examples of processes of mediation. Selection. This refers to what has been selected to include in a media text. Selection of certain facts over others can change the whole angle of the story. The aspects which are omitted sometimes can be as important as what is included. This can be particularly important in newspaper articles. Anchorage. These are the words that go along with images to give those pictures a certain meaning in a specific context. Captions and headlines in newspapers and taglines in adverts or on film posters are part of anchorage. Stereotypes. Simplified representation of a person, groups of people, or a place through basic or obvious characteristics which are often exaggerated is stereotyping. Based on the existing audience recognition, stereotypes can be used to describe characters. Stereotyping has severe negative consequences as it leads audience to generalize about people and places. Ideology. The ideas and beliefs held by media producers is their ideology, which are often reflected in their media texts. The ideology of a senior editor or the owner of a newspaper would influence the ways in which certain stories are being reported in their journals. It might relate to issues of caste, gender, religion, or in respect to their support of a certain political outfit. Ideology plays a central role in the construction of media texts, which influence the whole society in multifarious ways. Media and caste. The caste question was almost absent in the media, similar to the academic researchers. The issues of caste started appearing only in the 1980s. But it was only after the Mandal agitations that caste got more prominence in the mainstream media. This was perhaps due to the assertion of the lower castes, which forced the media and the intelligentsia to address the caste question. Even then, the selection and anchorage of the issues during the Mandal and post-Mandal agitations were ideologically heavily loaded in favor of the upper castes. This was also due to the near absence of media persons belonging to the lower caste communities. Underrepresentation of Dalits in media content. The underrepresentation of Dalits in Indian media has been suggestive of their insignificance, of their absence. The existing literature on the Dalits in Indian media gives adequate evidences of this underrepresentation. The Dalit issues did not find any space in the Indian press, which was reflective of the Indian social reality. According to Nagaraj, the press in India has rarely documented in any detail and with any sensitivity the grinding poverty, the day-to-day deprivations and discriminations, and the all too frequent atrocities faced by the Dalits in this country. The exclusion of the Dalits in the newspaper existed ever since the colonial period. Dhananjaya Keer, in his book Dr. Ambedkar, Life and Mission, mentions that the Kesari newspaper refused to publish an advertisement of a Dalit newspaper, Mook Nayak. He says the newspapers too practiced untouchability. Robin Jeffrey's book, India's Newspaper Revolution, pointed out the poor coverage of Dalits in the newspapers and the invisibility of Dalits in the newsrooms. His investigation of the editorial pages of the Hindu and Times of India of the first 9 months of 1996 had carried only 4 articles each about Dalits out of 717 articles in the Times of India and 470 in the Hindu. He found similarity in the coverage of the Dalits and the blacks in the United States. Chandrabhan Prasad, a Dalit columnist, wrote a number of articles in the newspaper, The Pioneer, and he wrote about the underrepresentation and misrepresentation of Dalits in the Indian media. He referred to the Indian media as Varna media, which meant casteist media. He viewed the exclusion of Dalits in media as a severe form of untouchability. Dalit leaders too got little space in national media. Kansiram, a prominent Dalit leader belonging to Uttar Pradesh, his death was of little importance to media. Ravi Kumar expressed his anguish, stating that one read with dismay this morning's Chennai edition of the Hindu, that is 10th October 2006. I was saddened to find the news of BSP founder leader Kansiram's death buried at the bottom of page 14. Not only was it relegated from page 1, it was given the lowest status on page 14, perhaps symbolic of the status Dalits are meant to enjoy in the Hindu social order. Yes, Anand, in his article covering caste, visible Dalit, invisible Brahmin, examines the correlation between the absence of Dalits in print media and the nature of the coverage of caste issues by such exclusionist media. He further argues that in the urbanized space of the newsroom, where beats are allotted to reporters to cover crime, political parties, education, power, health, environment, gender issues, cinema, foreign affairs, information technology, the stock market, different kinds of sports, and even the page 3, none is allotted to caste, though caste as a category has the potential to operate in almost all the bits. This denial of space, or rather the selective manner in which space is offered for caste issues by the media, owes a great deal to the tendency to treat caste as a pre-modern category. Kenneth Cooper, in 1996, wrote an article in the Washington Post, India's majority lower castes are minor voice in newspapers, in which he says, India's 4,000 daily newspapers publish in nearly 100 languages, but one voice is largely absent in the press of the world's largest democracy, that of the lower caste, which account for more than 70% of the country's 934 million people. Tista Setalvad, the editor of Communalism Combat, observed that the national media skipped the Golden Jubilee celebration of Dr. Ambedkar's conversion to Buddhism. On the coverage of the death of Kansiram, she evaluated that the consequent coverage by the media, barring a few exceptions, reflected a dismissive upper caste bias, imaginaries of Dalits in media. Dalits have repeatedly pointed out that the media depictions of their constituents reveal an unrelenting negativity in their portrayal. The debates on the media representation of Dalits primarily discuss about stereotyping, but this aspect has hardly got attention in academic researches. Hugo Goringe, in his book Untouchable Citizens, Dalit Movements and Democratization in Tamil Nadu, has questioned the treatment of Dalit political participation in the newspapers. He says that the media is crucial in getting a movement's message across to a wider public. But the Dalit Panthers of India boycotted the media as they continued to portray the DPI as extremists, so their moral arguments was often reversed. Goringe argues that the state and the media were in a privileged position to ostracize any movement, and the lack of communication infrastructure of the Liberation Panthers failed to contest these dominant definitions. In castes, when Dalit populations receive some attention, the issues are often revolved around violence. Even the representation is problematic. Dalits are represented in a stereotypical manner as instigators or victims of violence. Thankapan argues that the invisible Dalits also live in this country. They do dream, love, romance, dance, marry, make babies, use cell phones, read newspapers, watch television, listen to the radio, and surf internet. they too use television, DVD player, computers, and go to PVR halls to watch Big B and Co. reimagining popular culture lessons. They also know the spelling of mass communication and could function as better players in the long run. In fact, many affluent Dalits are helping the corporate world boom by burning their brain. And yet, Dalits could make their presence visible in the national media whenever some caste atrocities occur. Dalits always appear standing passively at the receiving end of development, atrocities, or crimes. They are not allowed to break away from this framework, else they become invisible. Mass media and social diversity. On 25th October 1996, newspapers reported that Bahujan Samaj Party leader Kansiram and his supporters assaulted 5 journalists outside the BSP leader's house. While the exact sequence and severity of the event was disputed, this incident prompted Kermit Cooper, the foreign correspondent for the Washington Post, to ask his friends in the Indian media for the contact details of a Dalit journalist. This propelled to the publishing of an editorial by B.N. Unial titled In Search of a Dalit Journalist, in which he wrote, "Suddenly I realized that in all the 30 years I had worked as a journalist, I had never met a fellow journalist who was a Dalit. No, not one. And worse still was the thought that it had never occurred to me that there was something so seriously amiss in the profession." A survey conducted by Yogendra Yadav, Anil Chamadia, and Jitendra Kumar concludes that India's national media lacks social diversity and does not reflect the country's social profile. It also said that Dalits and Adivasis are conspicuous by their absence among the decision makers. Not even one of the 315 key decision makers belong to the scheduled caste or scheduled tribes. The Hindu 2006. Anand studied the caste composition in the media houses in which the percentage of upper caste journalists was higher in upper caste owned establishments such as the Hindu. However, the absence of Dalits does not get the adequate attention while analyzing the working of the paper. Jeffrey interviewed the proprietors and editors of Tamil newspapers like Dinakaran, Dinamani, and Dinamalar. They accepted that there are hardly any Dalits in the newsrooms. Jeffrey observed that the absence of Dalit reporters, sub-editors, and editors, much less owners, meant that stories involving Dalits lacked the insights that Dalits themselves could provide. Similar situation prevails in English language newspapers and regional language newspapers. Media ownership was identified by Jeffrey as one of the factors for this crisis. Jeffrey interviewed V.T. Rajsekhar, editor Dalit Voice, in which Rajsekhar said that the owners belonging to the backward castes too joined the elites and have forgotten their roots. Sethi observes that the absence of a truly Dalit voice in the media results in the perpetration of stereotypes and the frequent denial of legitimate claim. Now, to summarize, let us now try and summarize what we discussed in the text. We learned how media representation has been involved in an historical process of creating marginalized communities in the society during the process of nation building. We also looked at the different theories of media representation and the key concepts to create a deeper understanding on how media representation works. We also looked at the various forms of exclusion which lead to the lack of coverage of the lower caste and the depiction of lower Dalits in mass media. This theoretical understanding of caste will be applicable to the question of exclusion of tribes as well. Do attempt the question in the self-evaluate quadrant for further reading suggestions. Please refer to the third quadrant. Thank you.